Hey everybody, I welcome to Drawing for the Tattooer. I'm James Wisdom, and so I'm hoping um, that we're going to have a really great show today, and we're going to talk about some really interesting topics. And so let me just clear my board here. I'm going to go I'm going to go through the lesson today, and I'm really excited, and uh, and so I hope you are too. Um, let's see what's up. Great. Thanks for letting me know the sound is working now. I'm gonna give it a shot. Uh, so we'll do it again. You can watch again if you like, or you can watch the replay. Um, uh, Welcome to Drawing for Tattooers. I'm James Wisdom, and today on Drawing for Tattooers, we're gonna have a really special episode. I wanted to talk today about really cool philosopher, a really cool mathematician, Pythagoras. So let me. I have notes today, class. Today's class is going to be a little bit theory heavy, but so forgive me for using my notes. But I'm going to need them, and I think that's the point, right? That essentially we're recording this. We're recording this lesson and we're putting it on YouTube. And so some of you might be able to draw along. Some of you might be able to, sort of join the Zoom call. We usually have Gabe. Gabe Ripley is usually introducing, the reinventing the tattoo shows. But Gabe's in Florida doing convention right now, and so we're really happy for Gabe. Hopefully, you got to sleep in today, Gabe. But I still sent Gabe the link to the Zoom call. So you might, if you are able to Zoom in, please feel free. Uh, and then I think also, um, what's going to be really nice as well is, um, you know, uh, this is going to be recorded and put on YouTube and put on social media. And so you can go back and you can watch it over and over again if you like. If there's something here that you get, some value out of, if there's something here that you think is you want a little bit more review, you can go back and watch it over and over again until you become much more familiar. So, all right, so let's start. Like I said, I wanted to talk about Pythagoras, and so right in here. Okay, Pythagoras. All right, who was Pythagoras? Well, I have a little history on Pythagoras. I'd like to read it for my friend Mr. Jack F. Um, the Hermetic history. This is on Pythagoras, right? Uh, Pythagoras was born in the 6th century BC, and he probably visited Egypt and Mesopotamia. Right? He moved to southern Italy and became famous for being a sage or an occult practitioner. This is a kind of magical being and cult leader. His religion was that of a reformed cult of Orpheus, which itself was a reformed cult of Dionysus. He believed in reincarnation and escape from this cycle. He talks about the nature of soul and fate after death and the ability to transform his own soul. So this is interesting. Pythagoras was this ancient philosopher person. He's kind of considered to be the first philosopher in many respects. And so uh, Pythagoras and the Pythagoreans, his followers, they really believed in the beauty of number, right? And how numbers kind of they kind of like are the basis for our reality and for beauty itself. So anyway, I'm really really excited to to share like this little history lesson. Very cool historical figure. So check it out, right? Pythagoras. Maybe you've heard of the Pythagorean theorem. Don't worry, don't worry. We're going to talk about drawing today, and all of the math stuff is really there to kind of support our drawing talk. But there's going to be a quiz on it later. But if you're more interested, right, there's maybe this is just the start, and you can do more and more research yourself. Okay, so I think to sort of to try to relate this figure and drawing and stuff together, I want to kind of go through some of really, really basic ideas. All right, so let's start. Point, right? And what is a point, right? So a point, right, is it's the visual element, right? If we look at it here, there's my point, right? A point is the visual element upon which all others are based, right? All other visual elements sort of start here with the point. And so I think, if you are part of the Reinventing the Tattoo community, you can you may be familiar with Guy Aitchison's thesis about pos-neg, or positive negative relationship, right? There's another term that we've used here, and that is the figure-ground relationship. So, for instance, this is a figure, and so we can see it amongst this background, right? It stands out, and this is the first. This mark, it indicates this relationship, this sort of force of of tonal value. This figure is pushing against the ground and becoming separate from it. So the point is the sort of the basis upon all upon which all other uh, visual expressions are based. Starts with a point. All right. Next, line. Right. Line. So what is a line? Well, line can sort of think about our notion of the point. Well, it's one point, it's connected to another point, right? That's the line, right? So we start to think about like, well, this is the foundation of it. This is the most basic unit, right? As far as an element of art goes, right? This is the most basic unit. This relationship between points, right, is a line develops. And so that's a way that you can just sort of remember it or theorize it, I guess. Like somebody asks you, what is a line? Well, it's the connection between 2 points, the relationship between 2 points. And that makes sense, right? Connect the dots. So, we all are probably familiar with something like that. So, and it's intuitive, right? It's intuitive. So, okay. Well, the third element that I want to talk about is the plane, right? Plane, right? So what can we think of in terms of plane, right? And so we have a line, right, where one point is meeting another point. And so if we add a third point, and then it connects to all the other lines, well, now we have a plane, right? And so a plane is, it can have any number of points and lines associated with it, but it's a shape. And so a lot of times when we're talking about like drawing stuff, we're going to end up having a plane. That's my cat. Pew the mew. Meow meow. Don't mind her. She's just exploring. She's um, she's the subject of many of my works of art. So she's my muse, right? One of my best friends, right? So if you have pets, you know what I'm talking about. So there's my little cat. Hopefully not distracting from today's lesson. So point, line, and plane. These are elements of art that that you're going to use, a lot. So let's talk about these elements, right? We'll try to internalize them. One other like sort of really interesting sort of relationship to Pythagoras and, this idea of the plane. Pythagoras came up with a theorem. It's a squared times b, what's b squared equals c squared. I don't know if that's a b. It might be. Is that a b? That's a b. Sorry, I'm dyslexic, so I do my b's backwards. So b squared or d squared doesn't matter, right? A squared plus b squared equals c squared. So what does that mean? Well, what we end up saying is that like let's take some units, right? Say 3 units, right? And then perpendicular, right? They would divide it into, right, 4 units, right? So this vertical line, this horizontal line, we connect it with a hypotenuse, right? Well, this will equal to the same units, like 5 units, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is what Pythagoras discovered. And maybe the ancient Egyptians also knew about this as well. But it's sort of a basic sort of relationship to right triangles, right? A squared plus b squared equals c squared. And so triangles are important, right? And I won't get into all the math, and I'm not, and I know I claim like I know all this math, and I don't. I really enjoy the geometry of drawing, and I also sort of believe that trying to approach these subjects, of math as some sort of truth, it helps with the drawings. I believe. So I want to encourage you, right? Don't be scared of the mathematics, right? Don't be scared of the language, right? The words that we use. Language helps us understand the world around us. It helps us understand our drawings. So, and drawing is language. Drawing is language. So if you love drawing, then you love language. So I want to encourage you. Oh, we're running out of time for another pad of paper pretty soon, gang. And that's good. I think that's a good sign, right? You use up your paper, and and then you got to go get some more, and that means that you're drawing a lot. So hopefully you're drawing a lot. Okay. Alrighty. So next, we sort of covered these elements of art: the point, the line, the plane. Now I'd like to talk about some principles, right? Some principles of art. So here's one that I think will be really useful for us. That's rhythm. Rhythm, right? So what is rhythm? Grab another pen. How's this one? Nope. How's this one? Yep. Perfect. Alrighty. So rhythm, how can we think it? Well, let's take it back to our principle, or let's take it back to our element rather of the point. We'll try to address this principle of rhythm. So here's a point, right? And then let's say there's another point, right? And then let's say there's another point, and yet again another point, and so on and so forth. So what do we have here, right? We're starting to develop out of this arrangement. There's some pattern that has happened, right? So rhythm, right, is this rhythmic sort of arrangement, right? So arrangement is the word I would use with arrange. Arrangement, right? So the arrangement, the composition, right, of these points. And so in this case, I'm using points, but we could also think about the other elements that we were just talking about. The arrangement of the elements, right, is going to kind of yield the same kind of thing. Where else do we see this sort of notion about rhythm, right? In music. That's right, musical theory. And a lot of like what we understand musical theory to be is it's mathematical, and it's also sort of it's looking for these the arrangement of finding the patterns, right? Hello, can you hear me? Thanks. I just got like a message. I just got a message that my sound dropped off. What I want to do real quick is let me hook up another microphone. So thank you for your patience, everyone. Don't know why having so many tech issues today, but it doesn't matter because we're we're having a great time drawing and stuff. It doesn't get much better. It doesn't get much better than drawing with your friends. I believe it. So let's see. Hopefully. Ah, all right. All right, so I hope that you can hear me now. If anyone's out there and you have my number, you can give me a text. Let me know that you can hear me, please. That'd be so helpful. Uh, it can be like a challenge, not to bemoan it, not to sort of like not to talk like I don't appreciate the opportunity here. Uh, but when you're by yourself and you have no idea, like what's working and what's not, it really can be really valuable. If It can really be very valuable, like to just have a little bit of correspondence that you are, that you're doing it well, that things are going right. So, anyway, I think that my Zoom is telling me that I've got sound. So I'm gonna hope that this works. If I'm clumsy here and I bump my microphone, I apologize. But hopefully you're hanging in there with me. Hopefully you've gotten the point here, and I'll just reiterate some of the finer points. We started today's show talking about point, line, and plane. We're terming those as elements of art. Now, we've started to talk about these two principles so far, rhythm and harmony. We kind of went through and talked about how harmony is about agreement, rhythm is about arrangement and composition and patterns, right? So, the last thing I want to talk about in terms of the principles of art today, and there are more, but I'm just starting with these ones. Balance. Balance. And so how can we think about balance, right? Well, balance is about comparing the values. Compare the values. Thank you. Sorry. Values. I misspell words a lot. Maybe you do too. Maybe you're a perfect speller, and if that's the case, I'm happy for you. But occasionally I'll misspell words, and I think that's something as tattooers. Like now, so I'm a tattoo artist. I misspell stuff. So sorry. But I love that. I love admitting that. I think that's a really important thing. You want to try hard to never misspell a tattoo, right? So always, double check your spelling. So there's your tattoo tip for the day, right? You're going to spell a word in a tattoo. You're going to want to make sure that you get your dictionary out and make sure you got the proper spelling. So, but have somebody else proofread it, right? But anyway, balance, right? I want to compare the values. And, so if you're thinking about tonal values like light and dark, or you're thinking about, again, the values generated through the rhythmic arrangement of your elements, right? How many points there are, how many lines there are, right? The value that's emerged through the harmonious relationship of agreement. These are things that could really be useful when you're trying to strike a balance. And so I think like a visual tool that I think is think about like back in school we used to like use this metaphor, visual metaphor, right? Teeter totter, sort of on on a fulcrum, right? So the triangle and the teeter totter, and then we think about like, all right, I've got this object here of a particular visual weight, right? How do I balance it, right? I can balance it maybe something like this. Right? So I end up having these um, this balance that emerges by comparing the values of these two particular individuals. They're not symmetrical. They relate to each other through balance, right? They have an agreement, so they bring about a harmony, and you know, and we're able to achieve a balance. Uh, so, um, maybe perhaps like another way to think of it visually, just sort of visualize it. We draw another one of these teeter totters, if you like. Let's put our heavy element, you know, there. Again, you could sort of maybe you can come up with a balance, right? That's something, something to this effect, right? There's all sorts of elements over here now, but because of the visual weight of these two groups, we end up having a balance that comes out of it. So I think that again, this is just a metaphor, a visual metaphor for you to start to think about how do you compare the values, right? Strike a balance, you know, develop a harmonious agreement in your patterns by using these other elements, the plane, the line, and the point. Again, I think I like this another metaphor of riding a bicycle, right? So if you've ever ridden a bicycle before, maybe you started off with training wheels. That's pretty much what we're talking about here. Like we're going through these elements and principles. Those are you practice these simple things. That's like that's very much like like a set of training wheels to a certain degree. And so uh, you take those off, right? You've internalized these things, and you are able then to express yourself, right? You're able to do those tricks that you've always wanted to do, right? Because you don't, you're not sort of held back by lack of knowledge, right? Or these training wheels, right? It's it's a system of development, right? That it's a process of development that you're going to go through, and so um, yeah, I hope that this has been helpful. And if anything seemed confusing, I hope that you're able to maybe go back and, sort of redo or rewatch some of the, what we were talking about. And that will help for you to have a deeper understanding of the elements and principles of art. So if you heard that before, and maybe you had an art class and you're like, what the heck are they talking about, right? Well, the actual things you use and versus the sort of notions that you can bring to it, right? And again, I think that the positive negative relationship, just to sort of bring it back to Guy Atchison's teachings, I think is important here. Pos neg is the same as the figure ground. It's the same as the point, right? It's the same as the point, right? This figure, it's a positive figure or it's a negative figure on a ground, right? It's a negative ground, a positive ground, whatever it's light, it's dark, there's contrast, but we're making a claim, a visual one. And so I just wanted to bring that back around to it, full circle, if you like. And on that note, full circles, we should definitely do our ellipse practice. I think drawing 50 ellipses is every day is something that I really like to make my students go through. And so since you're here being my student, you can go through it with me. All right, so we're going to do 50 ellipses. Again, I won't go through too many, too much explanation about ellipses. We have another episode about ellipses. I think it may very well be the first one. It's where I like to start because it's a very vexing kind of shape that
that's so ubiquitous. It's everywhere, and it's so important. And so the more that you can internalize it, the better. But let's just for a moment, let's talk about the elements of elements and principles of the ellipse. So let's say we have an axis, right? Long axis. Well, for an ellipse, you need a relationship between a long axis and a short one, and they need to bisect perpendicular bisectors. So what that means is they need to be at a perpendicular relationship, and they need to intersect each other at their midpoints, right? So once you've got that, then you really ought to be able to sort of find the shape. Oh my god. Well, I won't lie. I warmed up with a couple before this one, and that's not the worst. It's not the worst one I've ever drawn, but you know, like all have fallen short of the glory. If you like, it's impossible to do it perfectly. Like theoretically speaking, but I mean, there's something elegant and beautiful about human hand trying to draw this idealized shape, right? But that's why I practice it, right? And you might come pretty darn close. And if you can do better than this, then I'm a fan. I'm your fan. Trust me. Because I do this, it's really hard. So that's why I practice it. That's why I try to teach it. Anyway, we've got this long axis and short axis, and they are absolutely what constitute the interior space of this ellipse. But we can take an ellipse and we can orient it any sort of way that we want, right? As long as we sort of maintain this relationship. So that's what I'm going to do for my 50. Is I'm going to just sort of draw them all over the place. And so if you're ready, you got your pencil, you got your paper. Why don't we get started? Okay. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I really want to encourage you to, go clockwise, go counterclockwise, go around the track a couple times. I think that's good practice. And really, don't forget, we're not trying to we're not trying to get all tight and and draw them like this, right? You can keep it overhand. I'll do overhand, but you want to use your arm, right? You want to try to use your shoulder to do this with, right? So what was that? 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Sure. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44. Right? And then, of course, I like to use my other hand to do the last few. So, why don't you do that too? I think it's really valuable practice for us all to do that. So, I'm gonna scoot on over and try to do it with my non-dominant hand. I may not ever tattoo you with my left hand, but I think if you have another side of your body, you really ought to consider engaging with it every once in a while. You can really do yourself a great disservice by just completely favoring one side and never ever trying to address the other one. So yeah. All right, so 45. Oh, terrible. 46, 47, 48, 49, and 50. Awesome. 50. Right? I don't know I don't know about the left hand. I may not ever be a lefty, but I believe in it. I think we should, you shouldn't neglect yourself. You should you shouldn't neglect the other side. It has value also, And again, I think, like I really love this trick. I really love this trick, and I think it's something that a lot of it's an artist trick. So I want to share it with you, and that's using your hand mirror in order to investigate the shapes that you're making, right? And so again, what I will do is I'll use my mirror and I will look at the mirror to look at my drawing. Now I'm not directly looking at the paper. I'm looking at the mirror. That changes my perspective, right? And so that helps me see it with fresh eyes, so to speak. And so, right, let's say that this particular ellipse was very important, right? Well, I'm looking at it and I can't quite discern, like if I'm thinking about all the curves, right? I could think about these as a series of values that I'm ascribing to the ellipse. And let's say I really needed this one to be elliptical, and I can't quite tell where to change it to bring it into balance. So I can use my mirror to help me as a tool to help achieve a balance, right? I can know, that's a little flat over here, so I'll just I'll add a little bit more to that side, or I'll erase over there, and that'll help me achieve what I'm going for. So yeah. So again, I want to just encourage you to to use the tools you have available. You might be working digitally, and that's totally cool, right? If you're working digitally, you can make these ellipses perfectly, with an ellipse tool, and they're gonna be like better than a human can, more balanced than a human could make, and so much faster. But again, I think there's something that's really rewarding and something that you get from doing a practice like this, and from sort of again, you you may need to do this at a certain point, and having some practice under your belt will like sort of enable that. It'll be there for you when you need it. So, all right. So just a couple more drawing exercises, and so I'm hoping we don't run out of paper, but we'll figure it out. Okay. All right. So the next drawing exercise I want to do, square things up, right? We're going to think about squaring up. So let's draw some squares. All right. Vertical line, intersect, perpendicular, horizontal line. Let's connect them up. 45-degree angle, as best as you can do. Again, you can get a 45-degree angle triangle, and you can look at it. You can get a triangle, get a 45-degree triangle and look at it. I think it's really valuable, and it's a really good drawing tool to have as well. So, all right. Well, remember that we got that a squared plus b squared equals c squared thing, and so we've got so we have a definition of a right triangle, which is nice. Again, I won't go into too much detail about this, but we got 90 degrees here, and then 45 degrees here, and then 45 degrees there. And what that gives us is the same, rise over run. And that's how you can know, right, that you got these the series of perpendicular lines that are relating through this diagonal one. And then we can, of course, just repeat and give ourselves another horizontal line, intersect with it, boom. Right, when we have a beautiful square, it's fairly square, and I think we can rely on it as having it's close to squareness. If you're drawing squares, really, you're just sketching squares really quickly, you could make them all. You could be very distorted, and again, you may like sort of not notice it unless you were to view it in reverse. Again, like the mirror trick, or if you're working digitally, you can flip the canvas, and that way you can see what it's like by changing your perspective. But let's just say you're sketching out. Maybe you're sketching out in front of somebody and you need to come up with a square, and it's like, yeah, I can do that. Well, it might, if you don't practice it a little bit, it might sort of elude you. So, sometimes the basic things, right, are the most challenging. Like doing like teaching a lecture, like streaming a lecture like this. It's been very complicated today, but I'm, uh, hopefully the simple lesson that I'm trying to teach is coming through, despite all the complicated, everything I try to add into it. Too complicated. All right, let's try it again. All right, let's keep doing it. Okie dokie. So again, vertical and vertical line, horizontal line. I want to practice this. Again, if I have a nice 45-degree angle, maybe I can just sort of find it and use my drawing implement and just sort of take this information, bring it over. I'm already like heading in the right direction. Nice. Right, so I was able to repeat this pattern, like this angle, and do it pretty faithfully. So again, it's hand drawn still. So you're not going to achieve perfection, but even still, you want to try, right? Okay. Yeah. Nice. 45 degrees. Very cool. Got 3 squares. Well, a good rule to think about when you're designing anything for someone, is it's a concept called thumbnail sketches, right? Right, that thumbnail. Right, thumbnail sketches, right? Thumbnail sketches is a really small, sort of quick sketch that you would do, and it helps you to sort of to quickly get down, the thoughts that you have. Like you might have a couple of ideas for a design. Um, maybe it's a commission for a drawing, or maybe it's a tattoo that somebody wants. Maybe it's something that you want. You want to design a painting or a tattoo for yourself. That's cool. Um, don't start with don't start with the eyeballs, and don't start with the details. Instead, sort of think about the sort of basic, the compositional, the frame, right? That's what these are. They're frames. Okay, so got 3. Draw one more. Right? Just draw one more. So you have 4, and that way you have an adequate number of thumbnail compositions that you could start to develop, and you would end up, not only would you be doing your own due diligence so that you could be confident in the design you come up with, but so can your client, right? So can your customer. Even if that customer is you, right? You can come up with quick ideas that will lead you to the next step, right? That lead you to the next step. Very nice. Well, since we've got squares here, might as well put circles in the squares, because that's, I like to do that. So again, I'll just find the center point, and then I'm going to transfer that information, right, to the outsides. Now, if you remember, your circle fits inside a square. That's something that you can take that to the bank. it's a true thing. A circle fits inside a square, and so it has to touch, right? If a circle fits inside of a square, it has to touch at these particular points, right? It's the midpoint of each one of the lines that constitute the square itself. Okay, so call them the points of tangency. But I mean, you see this if you work digitally. You kind of see this. You might see like a marquee like this, and you're making a circle. There are these 4 points, and the circle touches them. Okay, so there we go. Very nice. So circle fits inside of the square. That's really good. So I'm just gonna draw a few more of those because again, just it's good practice. So I might even suggest that I, instead of doing all the interior lines, I, just sort of, I find where everything is, right? Now I've got a square that's a frame. It doesn't have the bisection, this 45-degree bisection, but instead I'm able to give myself, the pattern I need. Faithfully represent this circle and a square. Go around the track a couple times. Make a circle. Yeah, it's like real hard to draw a circle. You know what I mean? It really is. I'm sure mine is imperfect, but it's a lot better than having these sort of guidelines there. It's a lot better, and you might find that sort of adding a little bit, keeping a few of the guidelines in there for you while you're working on just practicing circles and stuff. I think that's all. I think that's cool, right? I really think so. So one more, why not? Because you're practicing. One more rep. All right. Yeah. All right. I'm trying. I'm trying. So, right. Something else like we could sketch in, right? Four square, right? Let's make it into four squares. Well, now this might be helpful for you, right? So if you were to sort of find the arc, it should really, if you were to talk about training those, right? Your circle should arc, this sort of way. So again, I mean, if you need more geometrical guidance, there's nothing wrong with it, especially if you're really, maybe some cool design could come out of this sort of relationship. You start drawing all these geometrical patterns, and they start to, to like relate to each other, and you really start having fun with it. Maybe you start to see a pattern, right? You start to see a pattern that like is really interesting to yourself or to somebody else, right? But again, I think you can. There's nothing wrong with really trying to get a handle on it to get better at it, and you got to do what you have to do. All right, so we still have a little more time, so I think I'd love to go through some more of the forms. There's really something I'd really love to cover today. It's kind of leading into being able to draw shadows, and I think we'll have time. I think but we'll see. All right, so so far we did our we squared things up, right, and we put our circles in the squares. So now I like to think about forms, like drawing these forms, and so I think a really good place to start is the cone, right? Is thinking about a cone. So how do we draw a cone? Well, I like to start with a central axis, right? Central axis. Right, that's this terminus here. All right, very nice. And so what we'll end up with, right, is we'll end up with we're going to have a cone is going to have like an ellipse, right, will be a part of a cone, and it's going to have, it's going to have two lines that sort of constitute its plane, right? A cone is a three-dimensional object, and so it's like kind of one big plane, if you like, two planes really, if you like, but how do we kind of think about it and construct it? Again, so a central axis, I think, is key for any kind of construction of the idealized a form, right? So cone, a cylinder, a sphere for that matter. Certainly with cubes, there are all sorts of points with cube that you'll need to take into consideration. So, all right, so I'm just going to draw in what will become the long axis of my ellipse. Looks pretty good. you know, you can measure it. So here's a measuring method. You can take your implement, right? I'm gonna align the very tip of it with the center point. I'm gonna line my thumb out here with the edge. So I'm just gonna grab this. I'm gonna move it over. And I'm like, just double check. It looks really close. You know, negligibly. Now I can do the same thing here with this short axis, right? I could just sort of, again, I'll line the tip of my pencil with where I want to measure, and I'll hold my thumb at, at the measuring point, and then move it, right? Rather than bring out the measuring tape and stuff, gosh, that can get complicated. Something that we should cover, and we will, how to read a ruler. It's an invaluable skill and something you got to practice and get good at. But when you're drawing, you know, and you're sketching, you might not want to stop and break your concentration. You may want to, you know, stay focused on what's going on. So, all right, a little bit of measurement, that helps. Very good. Well, we can draw an ellipse now, so I'll use red to sketch it. Very nice. Okay. Okay. Very nice. So there's the bottom of the cone, and so I want to sort of from the top here sort of find where I'm going to end it, and that seems pretty good. The edge. All right. Yeah. Cool. So there's the conical shape. And you know, if I were to grab my mirror and take a look at it, yeah, for me, it looks like this side is a little bit, you know, wide. It kind of swings out a little bit. So I'm just going to shave off just a little bit of it before I go in and really emphasize the contour, the outline that defines the perimeter of this form. Right? Again, I kind of think like, you know, when it's an idealized form like this, we're taking shapes and we're sort of thinking about this, you know, this idealized cone, right? So this is a form. But as soon as it becomes an ice cream cone, then now it's an object. I don't know if those distinctions make sense to all of you, you know, but just, you know, obviously this is a shape on two-dimensional paper, right? But as we start to bring it to life, it becomes this ideal form, right? Now it's the symmetrical form of a cone. So this is something that Plato, the philosopher, came up with, the Platonic forms. So, you know, the way it's sort of spoken about in academic terms. But, you know, for our audience, at some point, you know, they don't care about the forms. You know what I'm saying? They don't care, right? They want to see an object, right? And so an object would have to have some identity. So as soon as this, you know, this is a dunce cap, you put your dunce cap on because you didn't do well at your test. That's something that used to happen. You know, I don't know if it happens anymore. It's, you know, you shame people with their dunce cap, whatever. Or it's an ice cream cone, like I said, or it's you know, it's a, I don't know. You can be creative with it. I'm sure that you're got all kinds of suggestions for what this could be. But just to kind of, you know, to understand what it is we're trying to do, we're thinking about like real basic shapes, and we're equating those to these ideal forms, and then that's our job as artists, is to develop an identity for it, one that is, you know, like, again, the legibility of it was it changed from a point to a line to a plane, and then from a plane, you know, to this form, you know, from a shape to a form, and now as the maker of something symbolic, the artist, you'll make it into something else, right? Okay, we're still doing great on time. So there's the cone again, central axis, right, and then sort of long axis. Central axis will you know, they're equal to the short axis in this case, to the essay, right, and then, you know, that will be, you know, perpendicular to the long axis, the LA. So central axis, that's going to be the short axis. That's really going to be the short axis, and then you'll have to intersect that with the long one, just to kind of keep things in mind, right? Just keep things in check. What does the central axis do? helps you to achieve balance and symmetry, and then it also will help you understand, like, where to put your long axis so you can draw your ellipse. Okay, so same thing. Let's do one of a cylinder. Aha. All right, so in this case, we'll make our central axis on the bias here. And then, again, I want to try my best. Sorry. This is always challenging for me, like drawing, trying to get this perpendicular stuff at an angle. So I really have to turn my whole body to kind of make it work. Again, I can use my mirror. Definitely not perpendicular, definitely not, but we may have to just go with it, right? You can always grab something square and, grab your mirror and see if you can't figure out, like, if you got something perpendicular or not. Okay, so we can use our measuring trick, right? So I'm gonna say that that's the side length of the cylinder that I want. I'm drawing a cylinder now, so I can measure. I can measure again. There we go. There's that, and again, sort of just transfer this information. Let's see. Right. Double check. Double check. Yeah. All right, and then move it on over. Okay, now we should be pretty confident that we're pretty close. There we go. Again, I'm just gonna sketch it out. These will be the sides of the cylinder, like these. So these two lines they're parallel, and they'll hopefully start to give us, the sides of our cylinder. Okay. So again, we want, these to be. We want these to be bisectors. We want them to intersect each other at their midpoint. So the midpoint of the long axis and the midpoint of the short one. Okay. All right. And that should, again, we can, just not to make it too complicated, but I mean, you can build a box, lightly if you like, and this can give you the training wheels so you can draw your elliptical shape. Nothing wrong with it, especially if you're just sort of starting out, or I mean, if you really want to be super accurate for that matter, I mean, you might as well. I think it can be really useful. So same thing here. Draw. And I am kind of making slightly narrower ellipse here. I'm kind of trying to emulate a little bit of what we might see in perspective, in linear perspective. And we'll cover that later. But okay, so we're building in the training wheel. So there we go. Yeah, very nice. Really nice. All right, so let me just check. I'll look at my mirror. I'll check it to see like how does it look. Again, I'm not looking at the paper. I want to use my mirror, and I'm just going to look at it from a little bit. Try to get objective about it. Yeah, yeah, I see. I think what I would do is I might bring that one up, and then push this one out. Can't, it's. I'm trying. I'm trying to get it closer. It's never going to be super. It's not going to be perfect, right? I know that, but I enjoy the pursuit. So, all right, now that I've got much more confident about where things are, now I can do the contour, right? The contour around the perimeter of the object, right? So there we go, and right, the contour. Let's go around the track like we practice. Once I'm confident about it. How's that look? It looks fun. Yeah, it looks like a cylinder kind of. That's super duper. Well, yeah, I think if you're still with me, then great. Let's continue because I have more to say. So, I think these are really excellent sort of place to begin, and so I think we can draw one more sort of form And that's the cube. I think the cube is really, it's really crucial. And so you can always, we can get into the complicatedness of, linear perspective. We'll do that, but, so again, isometric projection, that's kind of what we've, somewhat what we got going on now, but let's kind of work through with a cube. All right, so let's draw parallel lines. Think of it almost like, we don't really want a square here necessarily, but you could do it like that would be equal to 1 point perspective. And so we want draw the side planes of the square, and then just keep these parallel. Just keep it parallel. Right? And it has kind of a cube-like shape. You know what I mean? It's a little. I think it's a little pointy up here, so I probably would say, let's distort it slightly. Let's distort this diamond shape, this rhombus shape, and sort of bring it out a little bit. Again, parallel. Right? I want these to be parallel. I think that's slightly more appropriate. And then vertical lines. Again, we want parallelness. Very good. Yeah, right. So it's I think that's pretty fun. We've got these cubes. Let's draw like one more. This could be kind of interesting. So instead of starting with the top, I'll start with the side plane. So, and again, I'll try to maybe bring a bit of balance to it. So let's say I've got more of a side plane here, and then maybe slightly less over there. Okay, so kick it out like this. This. There we go. Yeah, so even though, it's very similar, right, in shape, but, it's a much larger plane here, right, than this other side, where these are the same, possibly they kind of have a symmetrical sort of relationship. This one is just kicked a little bit more to the one side. It still has the cube-like feel and quality to it, but instead of it, being like totally balanced, it has a little bit more of a kick. And so this can be a really useful square, a cube rather, and we'll talk more about it. But this is what I would consider like a 45-degree angle cube, where this one I would consider like more of a 30-60-degree angle cube. But again, more about that later. Well, what if this were a speaker box or something like that? What if, right? What if there was a circle in the square? Well, like, let's see what that might look like, right? So again, what do we need to make a cylinder, right? What do we need to make, an ellipse that is, is traveling through space? Well, we need a long axis, right? We need a centralized axis, right? And central axis, short axis, and a long one. So let's sort of find the center point here, right? I'll just sort of bisect this plane of the cube, and again, I'm gonna sort of transfer this information, just like I did here, right? But I'm thinking about it in these terms. So points of tangency on this plane. Again, so right through the center of it, parallel with these lines, because this is the direction everything's going in, right? So there, that, and then I need a perpendicular, right? That means it's not gonna be exactly like. That means our perpendicular line isn't going to be exactly necessarily the same as these lines here. It won't necessarily be parallel. So I think hopefully to try to illustrate that, let's see. Yeah, so in this instance, this will be our long axis here, right? It's not exactly parallel to this top and bottom of this plane, but nonetheless, this is the long axis because why? It's related to the central axis, right? And now we have a short axis, and now we have a long axis. And so what we can do is we should be able to yes, draw on the box. Hopefully, hopefully it works for you. You know what I mean? Hopefully that's starting to work. so if we were to really lock it in, again, if it's inaccurate, it's going to show, really will show, but I think just for our purposes, the principles work, right? What we're talking about, that can work. So it's a little wonky, but that's the thought behind it. That you should be able to draw this ellipse in perspective and sort of place it on the side of the box. Let's try it one more time over here with this really large plane. I think that'll be nice. Okay, so roughly, so center point. It's roughly through there. Central axis of our ellipse, and then we're going to want a perpendicular bisector. Okay. So cool, right? So all right, so now we've got a cube. This one looks a little bit better to me, so I like it. Jeez. Build those outlines. Build them up. Okay. Well, all right. There's that. There you go. Circle fits in a square. Only like it works not only in 2 dimensions, but it can also work in 3 dimensions, right? Okay. Well, some of you, I think, were with me for a little bit of a technical error that I had earlier, and so if you've been with me through the entire time, I really want to thank you. But I also want to thank you all for watching. Even if you just saw this and it looked it looked like I knew what I was talking about. It looked smooth to you. I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you were able to draw along. I'm gonna go ahead and I want to try to do some closing remarks here. I want to thank Reinventing the Tattoo, Guy Atchison, and also just sort of mention, if you're watching right now, there's very limited availability for the evolution course, the Guy Atchison drawing with Guy Atchison, and where he covers Reinventing the Tattoo, the book, and there's all sorts of group activities, draw-alongs, and critique from Guy himself. So it's something I'm doing right now, and I love it. And so I want to encourage all of you, like, even if you can't sign up this semester, right? It's offered, I believe 3 times a year, but you can go to reinventingthetattoo.com to learn more. And then again, I want to thank you for coming and watching this. This will always be available free, and this will hopefully be something that you will engage with and get some value out of it. Again, thanks again for doing Drawing with Tattooers. I'm James, and I'll see you all next week. All right, bye-bye then.